The January 6th committee continues to ignore the Constitution and simple equal justice principles. This is your host, Dr. David D. Shine, and welcome to Business Law 101. And we're talking, of course, about the arrest, and he was released relatively soon after that without the assistance of an attorney after he saw a judge. We're talking about Peter Navarro, a White House consultant to President Trump, at around January 6th, 2021, when, as all know, there was a violent protest inside the Capitol. And again, I never, ever endorse violence. That was wrong. And the people who did that should be punished. However, I want to make sure equal justice is followed. And the current January 6th Committee of Congress is simply not an equal justice committee. And there are far, far too many criminal violations of much more serious nature that are not being prosecuted in the United States. It is a political situation, not a positive situation, to have this particular committee range on for months and months and months without actually accomplishing anything. Since the American public moved on, in fact, very quickly thereafter. Now, Peter Navarro was arrested for something called contempt of Congress. Well, I have contempt of Congress, but I don't have a subpoena to produce records to him. So I don't know that's that big a deal. But if you have a subpoena by any court in the United States, you do need to respond to that subpoena, or you better get your attorney over to the courthouse to say why you're not responding. Now, in the case of Peter Navarro, he said, I was on the president's direct staff. Therefore, my records are subject to executive privilege. And I agree with that. Now, I have a pretty good company. Famed emeritus Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz wrote an article on June 7th indicating that indeed the proper procedure would have been for the committee to have gone to the courts and said, we do not believe that he's entitled to executive privilege for those records. The correct order of things was to go to the court, get a relief from the assertion of executive privilege, and then to issue the subpoena to Navarro, and if necessary, issue the indictment. In this case, that was not done. Instead, Navarro, and as he pointed out, instead of being arrested at his home, many of us white-collar people, executive people, are not grabbed and handcuffed and thrown in the back of a police car. They often call your house and say, hey, we have an indictment and you need to show up down to the courthouse. People usually call their attorney and travel to the courthouse with their attorney. It's very civilized, especially in cases of which do not involve personal violence. So that was not done here. They waited until Navarro went to an airport, arrested him with great public fanfare at the airport, and put him in handcuffs and leg irons. Folks, this is an executive, this is a guy running around in a suit who is a very public figure. Clearly, this was done to embarrass this individual, embarrass the political party which he's associated with, and clearly is not equal justice in the United States. And I dare say if this was done to people of other colors and other genders or other sexual preferences, there would have been a huge protest. But of course, here it's not happening because of the fact that, frankly, much of the media has misrepresented this as Navarro being a bad guy. In any event, Navarro refused to hire an attorney. He said he wasn't going to waste hundreds of thousands of dollars paying an attorney for something like this, represented himself, and was released from court fairly quickly. And I assume there will be additional legal proceedings to discuss the issue of executive privilege. This is Dr. David D. Shine. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Business Law 101. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite platform.